Those two fake HOA cops had my daughter pinned by both arms, dragging her off my porch, screaming about HOA arrest authority. They didn't notice the man stepping out of the cabin behind them, me, holding a US Marshals issued rifle. Before we dive in, comment which country you're watching from. Let's see how far this story travels. To understand how this moment ever happened, how two wannabe officers dared lay hands on my daughter, you need the truth from the beginning. It started long before the dragging, long before the shouting, long before I stepped out of the cabin with a weapon and a badge that outranks every fake title these men pretended to have. It started with Claudia Wexler, the HOA president of Pine Ridge Shores. Claudia wasn't just controlling. She wasn't just power hungry. She was obsessed. Obsessed with authority, obsessed with lines on a map, obsessed with the idea that the lake and everything around it belonged to her because she chaired one HOA meeting every month. Our cabin, it sat on the far side of the lake. Private, family-owned for 60 years, nowhere near HOA jurisdiction, not under their rules, authority, or influence. But Claudia wanted it, and Claudia hated the word no. My daughter, Riley, had been staying at the cabin for the summer while taking online classes. Bright kid, calm, knows how to handle herself, grew up hiking these woods. One afternoon, she texted me, "Dad, some HOA people came by, said I need an ID to be near the lake." That was the first warning. 2 days later, "Dad, they're driving past the cabin, slow, watching." Then, "Dad, they knocked and said I'm trespassing. I told them we own the land." They argued. That's when I told her to stay inside, lock the doors, and record everything. I was already planning to drive up the mountain the next morning, but Claudia escalated before I got there. She sent her HOA enforcement unit, two men in cheap stitched vests with HOA cops slapped on like decals, driving a black SUV painted by someone with the artistic talent of a toddler. These weren't cops, not security, not trained, just two men desperate for authority, eager to impress Claudia. Riley was on the porch when they pulled up. One of them stepped out, pointing at her like he'd found a criminal. "You are under HOA custody for trespassing on association land," he declared. Riley actually laughed. "This isn't HOA land. My family owns this cabin." Wrong answer. The second man lunged for her arm. The first grabbed the other. She screamed, not in fear, but in anger. "Get off me!" They ignored her. They dragged her off the porch, one on each side, her shoes scraping the wood as she fought them. And that was the moment they made their final mistake. The two fake HOA cops kept Riley pinned between them, each gripping an arm so tightly her fingers were turning pale. She tried twisting free, tried planting her feet, tried anything, but they dragged her off the porch like she was a criminal they'd captured. "Stop! Let go of me!" she yelled, kicking at the ground. They ignored her. "Pine Ridge Shores HOA is placing you under arrest," the one on the left barked, "for refusing to comply with lake access regulations." "There are no lake regulations," Riley shouted back. "This isn't HOA land." The other cop just laughed. "Oh, sweetheart, everything around this lake is HOA land. Now move." They were 10 feet from the porch, 5 feet. One more tug and they'd have her off the steps entirely. And that's when both of them froze, because the screen door slammed behind them, and I stepped out, boots hitting the wood, slow, deliberate, deadly. The US Marshals shirt stretched across my chest, my rifle gripped in my right hand, my voice low enough to shake their bones. "Let my daughter go." Both fake HOA cops turned their heads like rusty hinges. The one on the right swallowed hard. The one on the left tightened his grip on Riley, wrong move, and tried barking authority he didn't have. "Put the weapon down. This is HOA enforcement action." I stepped closer. "This property isn't yours," I said quietly. "This land isn't yours. And that girl you're holding? Definitely not yours." The guy on the left yanked Riley again, trying to use her as leverage. Riley screamed, "Dad!" I raised the rifle. He panicked. "You won't shoot," he yelled. "You're bluffing. You're just some..." "Dad," I exhaled slowly. "I command a US Marshals Fugitive Task Unit," I said. "You boys picked the worst possible driveway on earth." The right-hand HOA cop tried to drag Riley backward again, desperate now. And that's when I fired. 2 shots, controlled, precise, federal trained. The right-hand cop dropped instantly, legs giving out, collapsing into the grass with a scream as the rounds hit center mass. Not lethal, intentionally so, but disabling enough to end his part in this story. The second fake cop panicked, still gripping Riley's wrist like she was a lifeline. "Let her go," I barked. He bolted, not away from Riley, away from me. Tugging her with him, stumbling, trying to reach the HOA SUV parked by the tree line, he dragged her 3 steps before I moved. One squeeze of the trigger. The shot slammed into his shoulder, spinning him sideways. He collapsed, screaming, finally releasing Riley. She ran straight toward me, arms shaking, breath sharp, but safe. I kept the rifle leveled on both men as they writhed on the ground. "Stay down," I growled. "Move again and you'll regret it." Riley clung to my side. "Dad, they really tried to take me." "I know, sweetheart." Both fake HOA cops were moaning on the ground, one gripping his shoulder, the other clutching his ribs where the round hit. Neither of them was standing up again. I pulled my phone from my pocket with my free hand. Then I called 911. "This is Deputy Director Cole with the U.S. Marshals," I said, voice steady. "Two armed suspects impersonating law enforcement attempted to kidnap my daughter. Shots fired. Both suspects down but alive. Send county units and EMS to Pine Ridge Cabin. Now." Riley squeezed my arm tighter as I continued scanning the tree line. "They're not getting anywhere near you again," I told her. Sirens began faintly echoing in the distance. The HOA cops on the ground looked up with wide, terrified eyes. They knew exactly what was coming. I said the words that made them regret forever. "You boys aren't dealing with an HOA complaint anymore. You're dealing with federal charges." If you're enjoying this HOA story so far, like and subscribe because the story is only going to get better. The sirens grew louder, fast. Riley stood behind me, arms wrapped around herself, eyes locked on the two fake HOA cops bleeding into the pine needles. The first one, the one who tried to drag her by the arm, was completely unconscious, chest rising shallowly, his vest soaked where the round hit. The second cop, the one who tried to run for the SUV, was awake but barely. He could only groan and clutch his shoulder, each breath ragged. He wasn't getting back up. Not today. Not ever in my presence again. The gravel road rumbled. Two county cruisers arrived first, sliding to a stop. Deputy Morales and Deputy Hensley jumped out with weapons drawn until they saw me standing there with my badge raised. "Cole, what the hell happened here?" Morales asked. I didn't lower my rifle. Two suspects impersonating HOA law enforcement attempted to kidnap my daughter off our porch. I engaged. Both are down but alive. Hensley moved to the unconscious cop, checked his pulse, then looked up. "He's stable, not talking anytime soon." Good. An ambulance pulled up next, medics rushing past us. While they worked, Morales looked at the shredded vests lying on the ground and shook his head. "These idiots really tried to take your daughter? Up here at this cabin?" "They worked for Claudia Vexler," I said. "She sent them." That name changed everything. Morales stiffened. Hensley muttered, "Oh, hell." The medics looked nervously at each other. Everyone in 3 counties knew Claudia Vexler was trouble, but nobody knew she had crossed this line. A third vehicle rolled in, this one black, unmarked government plates. My team. 2 deputy U.S. Marshals stepped out, Warren and Lee. Rifles slung, scanning the area before approaching. Warren looked at the suspects and let out a low whistle. "Kidnapping attempt? Yep. Assault on a minor? Yep. Impersonation of federal authority? Add that too." Lee glanced at Riley. "You okay, kiddo?" She nodded weakly. "I just want this over." "It will be," I told her. "Tonight." The marshals secured the scene fast. Weapons collected, evidence bagged, photographs taken, statements recorded. County deputies stepped aside. This was now a federal case. One medic approached me. "The unconscious one needs transport immediately. The shoulder wound, we can stabilize him, but he's done resisting." "Good," I said. "He's resisted enough for one lifetime." As the 2 fake HOA cops were loaded into separate ambulances, Warren turned to me. "You know what this means for Claudia, right?" "Oh, I know." Later that night, after Riley was safe inside, after my team cleared the area, Morales returned with a printout. "Arrest warrants approved," he said. "Federal kidnapping charges, conspiracy, impersonation, everything." "What about Claudia Vexler?" I asked. His answer came with a grim smile. "She's getting the big one, orchestrating a kidnapping of a marshal's daughter. The U.S. attorney signed it in under an hour." Riley stepped onto the porch beside me, watching the cruiser lights flash across the lake. "Dad, what's going to happen to her?" I put an arm around her shoulders. "She's about to learn what real authority looks like." 2 days later, the 2 fake HOA cops were charged with attempted kidnapping, impersonating law enforcement, aggravated assault, armed trespassing, conspiracy under federal statute. They were each sentenced to 14 years in federal prison and ordered to pay $38,000 in restitution for medical costs, property damage, and federal penalties. HOA President Claudia Vexler was charged with orchestrating a kidnapping attempt, directing impersonation of federal officers, criminal coercion. She received 18 years, the HOA was dissolved, and her assets were seized to cover fines. And that's how 2 fake HOA cops learned the hard way. You don't lay hands on a marshal's daughter. What do you think, folks? Was I too harsh for shooting them? What would you have done if someone tried to take your daughter right off your own porch? Drop it in the comments. I'd love to know. The end.